Lawyers will be back in court today as the Justice Department looks to block AT&T's proposed merger with Time Warner, which owns CNN. Let's bring in CNN senior media correspondent and host of Reliable Sources, Brian Stelter, and CNN's politics, media, and business reporter, Hadass Gold. Brian, if I could start with you, can you see in these early decisions and statements from the judge any indication as to where his decision is likely to fall, or is it too early?
He is certainly trying to maintain order and speed up this trial. He's sometimes been frustrated with the pace of how this is going. But no, I don't think there's a lot we can read in the tea leaves about how the judge is reacting so far. What we do know is that back on the stand today are Turner executives talking about how these distribution deals are done, how they are orchestrated, how the company tries to gain higher subscriber fees in these negotiations. And one of the questions of this case is whether AT&T owns Time Warner, if the deal is allowed to go through, whether AT&T would have too much power in the marketplace to do that.
Hadass, give us the courtroom drama that unfolded yesterday.
So yesterday was spent all going deep into those negotiations that Brian was talking about with Turner executives, pretty much how they negotiate with your local cable provider to get CNN, HLN, TNT, TBS on the air. And what the government was trying to prove was that Turner was willing to go dark, which means to completely cut off access, in order to get those higher fees, in order to get the types of terms that they wanted in order to air on those distributors. But Turner executives, on the other hand, said, well, yes, these are hard-charging negotiations for both sides. The door swings both ways is how Turner executive Coleman Breland described it. And he said, listen, when we go dark, it's not something we want because we lose tens of millions of dollars when we go dark. He said that during a Dish satellite TV blackout that they had a few years ago, they lost something like $30 million in ad revenue. So he was trying to push back on the government's assertion that Turner wants to go dark, that this is part of a good strategy that they have. Because he said, look, we lose a lot of money when we do this. It's going to be honestly up to the judge to decide whether this is such a useful tactic and whether it's a tactic that they will use in future negotiations or whether it will be even more powerful under the AT&T umbrella, because then you risk sort of this balance of who gets this valuable content.
Yeah, the key word being the future, right? In the future, what is the media marketplace going to look like 5-10 years down the road? That's partly why I think this is so interesting and so challenging for the judge in this case. I have no idea how we're going to be watching TV in 10 years. Yeah. I have some guesses. I have some dreams about how it should work, but I don't think anybody knows exactly. And yet this kind of case will help determine how the marketplace evolves and how people pay for cable, pay for television in the future.
One of the fascinating things about this case is you have a very pro-business president, proudly from the business community, advocating less regulations, new economic advisor, free market advocates all around, with the exception of some companies that are perceived as critics. Yeah. And I want to talk about Amazon and the president's full court press against Amazon, because their stock's down almost, I think, 7-8% over the last several days. I mean, It's really stunning, directly in reaction to the president's tweets against the company. How do you read this?
You look at this and you have to think that the president's personal animus, his personal frustration with the Washington Post, is plain in his decision to attack Amazon. That is what's clear in the reporting here, and it's clear through his own tweets, because he likes to link Amazon and the Washington Post on Twitter in these tweets in the past. It's uncharted territory, isn't it, John? We haven't seen this before from an American president.
That's right. You can't underestimate how disturbing that is, right? I mean, this is the president. We talk about how tweets are policy here, right? I mean, the president, via Twitter solely, is imposing an enormous economic cost on a critic, Jeff Bezos, who owns a newspaper whose coverage the president doesn't like. It's as simple as that.
And Bezos just staying out of it, right? He's not saying anything. Amazon's not commenting. It's trying to weather the storm. But it all comes back to facts and whether the president has the facts or not, whether it's about his complaints against CNN or Amazon or other companies. You know, he's on Twitter this morning saying that it's a fact that CNN only hires people if they're anti-Trump. Now, we all around this table know there's no litmus test. There's no test like that. That's crazy talk.
True.
It's crazy talk. But the president called it a fact. He called it a fact.
And one thing
makes me want to go back to bed, guys.
No, you can't. We need you. Go ahead, Hadass.
And exactly what Brian is talking about, we're not hearing him criticize other things like the Sinclair attempt to own those Tribune stations and really increase their reach. We don't hear him criticize the 21st Century Fox Disney deal. And another thing I want to point out in terms of a Republican sort of pro-business president, if you look at net neutrality, that rule about whether the internet should be open, where companies can charge more money to go faster over their pipes. We're going in completely opposite directions. The administration on net neutrality is saying that companies should be able to have more power of it. But then when it comes to the AT&T Time Warner merger, they're saying, no, we need to get more involved. And those are completely opposite views.
Okay, Brian Hadass, thank you very much for the conversation.